Hi there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today on Astrology Today with Jeff Harman. It's Monday, June 10th, 2024. I hope everyone's doing well. Today, Jeff is going to look at the first quarter moon, and then he's going to go into the planet Mars as it goes through the lunar mansions. Very, very intense energies happening right now, coming up, definitely. Last week, we spoke about planet Mars, and we spoke about Uranus. This week, Jeff's focusing on Mars, the planet of war. Now, it certainly seems like the owners are trying to push us in that direction. God willing, we will not get there. All I can say is the demonic forces are working overtime right now. Overtime. Let's get started, Jeff.
Thanks for that. Yeah, our last podcast, we had talked a lot about this powerful event of Uranus in the sidereal zodiac going into the very first part of Taurus. And remember, I had said the last time this had happened was the 7-year bracket of the precursor to World War II and the ending of World War II. 7-year period happened right back in the 40s. And of course, World War II ended in 1945. But also the time before that was the 7-year dramatic period of the Civil War in the United States. So this is always a time of great power. Now, one of the things I want to focus on in this podcast is Mars. And we're going to take a little journey here. As you can see, Mars right now is in the lunar mansion of Ashvini, which is really interesting because the metaphor for this is the horse or the woman with a horse's head, and it charges and it delivers and it brings energy. And it's going to stay in this all the way up until June 19th. Now, after June 19th, it switches lunar mansions to Baharini. Now, what's interesting about this, Baharini is the one who receives, holds, and or destroys. It's almost like the womb. Remember, I had said the sun is the seed, the moon is the crucible. So it's almost like the womb of the earth, or you could say the womb of spiritual energy that is contained and then it releases. So the events that are happening right now, between now and the middle of this month, are going to have a lot of play involved in what gets released. It's almost like a germination period. And then what's going to happen as Mars comes along here into July, like we mentioned last podcast, what's going to happen is it's going to hit the lunar mansion of Kritika. Now, Kritika is the one that cuts. It's also known as the lunar mansion of the cutters. It's almost like angels that cut. Very powerful. And again, I've been mentioning this parallels the second sidereal Pluto return on the United States. Now, this is very interesting. Why? Because on the 9th was in St. Petersburg, Russia. Davos is a big thing that everyone's heard about, but St. Petersburg, Russia just had a huge meeting on the BRICS nation. And of course, people may not know this. I didn't know this until just recently, but the 9th of June was when the Petrodollar expiration happened with OPEC and, of course, Saudi Arabia. And this is huge. It could make the petrodollar fail. Furthermore, we could see gold and silver soar through the roof. And I have to tell you, don't be surprised if this happens. And look at the other side of the coin. We're seeing Sweden and many of the other Northern European nations like Finland, all looking at getting into NATO. And of course, this whole situation with Ukraine and Russia and the BRICS nations could really heat up. As I had mentioned before, follow the money. It's always the money that brings this stuff about. If we look at the power structures of the modern world, it was reformed back in 1913 and 14 with World War I. It was finished in World War II. And of course, the United States became the superpower of the world because not only was the de facto currency of the petrodollar, but also we saw the power of the United States grow from World War II. Now, we are in this same type of cycle right now. This is a very dangerous time right now. And what's most concerning is what I mentioned the last podcast, is when Mars joins that Uranus coming in on July 12th, which is almost precisely when the second Pluto return hits. So we are in some dicey times right now. And I have to tell you, I've heard a lot about Nostradamus for many, many years, but this might be a lot more in alignment with some of the quatrains and what they intended. I just think they got the timing off. I remember my mother telling me about Nostradamus and the quatrains. She gave me a lot of documents, and no one was 100% sure. There's been a lot of speculation. Let's hope that this isn't the time that lines up. But the astrology certainly shows this is a time of mounting tensions. I just got word that the United States has been flying B-52 re-equipped bombers, nuclear ready to go outside of Kaliningrad. Now, this is just a recent report. If this is true, it parallels the astrology to the T, and I believe it might be. The other thing we're seeing here is we've got a stellium of planets right now in Taurus. Now, that's not going to stay there too long because the sun will get out pretty soon. But this is a very important month because we're also going to have the first quarter of the moon this Thursday on the 13th, which will happen right around 10:19 p.m. Of course, that's Pacific time if you're on the East Coast, extrapolate, or wherever else you are in the world. But this is very, very, very powerful because we're leading up to a full moon on the 20th, which is the summer solstice. So actually the full moon's right on the 21st, but the summer solstice, which is where the sun gets the highest point in the sky, is peaking up again right on June 20th. We'll be talking a lot more about that. So this is some powerful, powerful energies, and the world at large is mirroring this. So let's hope that this does not happen. But we're actually seeing India is buying oil now in rubles. So, Americans, nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. But the United States dollar could crash and burn. This could destroy the economic structures of this country if this happens. So let's hope it doesn't. But I think we're about to see a roller coaster ride par excellence. And I hope life as we know it doesn't change, because it certainly could in a number of ways. Don't be surprised at anything. Like I said, when Uranus enters this sign of Taurus, and particularly because it's in the lunar mansion of Critica, it's when Mars joins it. When does that happen? That's actually going to happen right around July 7th to 8th. It'll be very late on the 7th, early on the 8th of this July, coming right up. And of course, that'll stay. And that's with the 7 stars in the Pleiades. And of course, the most malefic is the Caput Ogul that we had mentioned before. So this is very, very powerful stuff coming at us very, very strong. And let's hope it stays positive. One last thing I want to mention here is it's always good during traumatic times like this to remember we truly are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And again, some of the books that I've been mentioning, the 30 Years Among the Dead, Freeing the Captives, there's been a lot of people who have contacted me lately about near-death experiences. And of course, these have been a huge topic on many shows on the History Channel, etc. And why that's germane is because NDEs prove there's something beyond these lives. And we're all going to cross that bridge sooner or later. And I think what's most important about this is when you read Dr. Carl Wickland's work, he had proven that many of the souls that cross over are not aware that they're even crossed over. And if we become aware of this before we cross over, we're likely to exit these bodies with much higher levels of consciousness and at least awareness as to what to expect. We are so rooted down in our lower conscious minds that we rarely think of the possibilities of anything outside of our myopic worlds, of our money, our homes, our bills, our daily routines and work, which is all important to be focused on without question. But I think when we put our minds more at ease, realizing that there is an entire experience, and this is what the demonics play on. They play on fear, anxiety, and demise. And if they can keep us down in this area of psychological, doldrums, they prey off that energy. And I think they prey off it on the outskirts of our realms, much more than we know. And I think it's really becomes germane when we exit these bodies. So I always like to bring this up because it's such an important element for all of us to always keep in our minds and keep aware of. And of course, the religions have always tried to do this. And for that, they really deserve credit. And that is to realize we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. But I think that really gets lost in the anguish and in the craziness of this world, especially right now. You see all the pain, the suffering, the wars. It gets pretty dicey. But we always have to keep that in mind. And that's why I think feeding our minds with conscious awareness has such a huge effect. And as Mars goes through this, it will affect each one of us differently, depending on the aspects that it makes to your chart. So it's very important to hold all these things, I think, in your mind, so that no matter how crazy it gets, and hopefully it doesn't get crazy at all, we will come out of this in a much more conscious awareness. And I've noticed that about a lot of the older generations. I'm talking to people born in the 1800s, early 1900s, which I had a chance to meet in my younger years. And you could see there was a toughness to a lot of them. They were, I think, tuned in and more rooted in the reality. And this modern world is very challenging for people to be aware of. And this whole internet age, as well as the iPhone age, is very important to keep focused on grounding and who we truly are. So,
well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for this. Short but sweet. Thank you very much. And thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Mondays. Take good care of yourselves, and we will see you next time on Astrology Today with Jeff Harman.